Welcome and good morning. Love to see so many of you people here. Because of the snow, I can imagine that it was a hard time to get here. For me, it was a 20-minute walk from the hotel and my feet are soaking. They're wet. But I'll try not to walk around that much so I keep the stage clear for the rest of the speakers of today. So let's get started. We're going to talk about security this morning. And, well, although we are developers, security is more or less a hot topic these days, right? I mean, if you think about it, people say like, data is somehow the new gold. I mean, everybody wants to improve their products, wants to gather data, wants to improve their service. And to do so, we need to know what you're doing, who you are, where you live, and what your habits are. To do so, we gather all these data, sometimes for specifically marketing purposes, to hand over you the perfect product that you need, or just to improve the product we already have. And actually what we want to do, and what we're trying to do, is by reading your habits and reading the stuff you do and who you are, now we actually can predict the future. So we actually want to know what you want to, what you need to need like tomorrow, before you actually need it. And that's the ultimate goal that a company has, right? I mean, we do not simply buy products anymore, we buy experiences. I mean, so we have to measure how people behave, what they want. We need to predict the future in some way, and we need to try to find patterns. So these improvements can go in a good way, but also can be used in a bad way. I mean, and we do this all the time, right? If you see something like this, it's Google Analytics. And I mean, every web vendor, every website has something like this and wants to see what people are doing on their website. How they are in the flow, in which page they're turning out, if they are actually buying what they see, if they like the blue button more or the red button more. All these things we are trying to measure to improve our products. But if you turn it the other way around, if instead of measuring things, I'm showing you things in a certain way. For instance, political views. If I only show you because of your habits, show you one side of the story, then you probably only think in this direction. And I can steer you, right? And people who don't believe it, we had some things like Cambridge Analytics on Facebook, which was proven to be manipulating the US voting system. So data can be used for good, for instance, to improve your product, to improve the experience from a customer side, to make more revenue, but it can also be used in a bad way to influence you to do something you probably didn't do if you had the whole picture. Well, that's kind of the story, but first let me introduce myself. I'm Brian. I am your average software engineer. I work for a small company called Blue for IT, which is a small company in the Netherlands with only 20 developers, and we work consultancy based on long-term projects all over the country. And that means I work for big banks, insurance companies, web vendors, all sorts of things we work for. And I'm a Java backend engineer. And this talk is mainly because we developers are builders. We do not care much about security in the first place because we want to build something, right? And if you talk about security or privacy, people tend to come up with the following phrase: but I got nothing to hide, so why care? Okay, first of all, is that true? Do you got nothing to hide? Second of all, if you got nothing to hide, do you want anybody to know everything? That's the other side of the story. I mean, I'll give you an example over here. This is a story from a few months ago in the Netherlands where the female Dutch handball team was in a sauna. There was a camera placed and the video was streamed all over the internet. And if I ask these women, do you still think I got nothing to hide? I beg the difference. So, although you may think you got nothing to hide, that doesn't mean you want to show everybody everything, right? And probably you do have something to hide. For instance, if we think of the way we search on the internet, who uses Google? The rest of you use Bing. Yeah, sure. So, okay, but for instance, let's assume that we all use Google, and Google always saves your search results. Do you want these search results to be public to everyone? I mean, I don't care that people think I was looking for a black t-shirt, that's okay. But if people knew that I was looking on the internet, for instance, because I got a rash on my arm, or I got a certain symptom, and what do most people do? Look on Google. What is happening to me? And you probably know that if you look on Google, and there are many people who do that, and you look on Google and you find out you have a simple rash, and you click through and you click through and you click through, and you end up with some nasty disease that is not curable anymore. And if you end up at the doctor, it probably is just a rash because your sweater wasn't washed with the right washing stuff. So, but can you imagine that these search results, and if we have a pattern and you do have something, like some disease or something, do you want your insurance company to know? Or, for instance, your mortgage provider. I mean, if my mortgage provider sees that I'm looking for a certain way, or sees my behavior on the internet, he can probably say, oh, you drink too much, you do not work out that much, you probably have a disease, so your monthly fee will go up. Is that fair? I don't think so. So I think we do have something to hide. But let's take it a step further. And this one is actually from Southeast Asia, or moreover, China. In China, we have this social ranking system. For people who didn't heard of it or didn't read about it, in the major cities like Beijing, Shenzhen, Shanghai, call them everywhere, there are a lot of cameras. And people are, the government is doing facial recognition on the citizens and try to rank them socially. That means if you simply jaywalk, so crossing a street with a red light, you get a negative credit score or negative social ranking score. If you do that twice, your social ranking score will go down up. If you do that 3 times, it's probably possibly impossible to get a new mortgage or a new loan. It's that heavy. On the other way around, if you do good stuff, if you have good friends, if you have friends with high social scores, you end up higher. And you probably have discounts on, say, your hotel bills or your car rentals. And the funny thing is, if you ask the Chinese themselves, they're totally fine with that. They don't care because they want a clean and nice society. But if I ask the same question in Western Europe, or Eastern Europe, or America, or whatsoever, the people disagree with that, because we think some things are private and some things can be public. And these things, like the social ranking score, is introduced by the government. So it's legal, by definition. But you can imagine, because data is getting more and more important for companies, that there is a big black market surrounded with gathering data. And then we come into the, well, shady part of the internet. Let's label it cybercrime. Most of the people think that cybercrime is just a one-man show. Just the loner student in his dorm trying to hack Facebook and getting your private nude pictures. What's not? Data is that important these days that it's actually, that we have to consider it organized crime. I mean, it are groups of people, most of them don't know each other, and they're specialists, just like we are. I mean, I'm a back-end developer. Don't put me on a front end. I will come up with a website, but it doesn't look nice. The same holds for these experts. There are experts that can lure you into something, there are experts that can extract your data, the other experts will sell your data, and together they will profit out of it. So it's a real threat and it's growing. We have to consider organized crime as a less legitimate business. And if you think about it, the risks are actually quite low. Imagine, what would you think is heavier? It has more risks. Trafficking drugs or stealing data? I think that trafficking drugs is far more risky. I mean, everything in our society is in place. We've got border control, we've got police, we've got dogs that sniff your car, etc., etc., etc. But if you look at cybercrime and data and these kind of criminality inside it, we are still not ready for it. Laws are not in place because the law is only inside your country or perhaps inside of the European Union, but people can be in Southeast Asia, America, and South Africa at the same time or working together. We do not have these things in place, and it's pretty easy to hide. People are not ready. And most of all, there is a lot of money involved. And what do I mean with a lot of money? I mean, say for instance, the biggest bank heist in history was in 2003. That was the bank heist of the Bank of Iraqi. And it was $1 billion. I wish I had that on my account. If you look at the annual budget for the US military, in 2015 that was around $600 billion. I cannot imagine how much money that is. But if you look at the damage cybercrime does worldwide in 2016, it was $3 trillion. Just give me 1% of that and I'm fine. You never see or hear from me again. But there's a lot of money involved. And if the numbers are correct or not, it doesn't matter. Because if you look at research on the internet and you see in 2022, these amount will at least double or triple. So that means it's getting bigger, 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 and more bigger. But let's get back to you, because I think most of you are developers, right? Who is a developer over here? Awesome. Thanks. Then I'm talking to the right crew. So if you think about your system and you think about vulnerabilities and you think about security, we can actually split them in three. And we use the CIA triad for that. We've got confidentiality, availability, and integrity. And you have to pick your battles. You cannot be good in all three of them. Confidentiality, it means roughly privacy. You don't want your data get into the wrong hands. If that is your main concern, you should focus on that first. Of course, the other two need some focus as well, but that's your main focus. If we look at integrity, it means consistency, like accuracy. Is it absolutely correct what I'm saying, or is it slightly different? So you have to choose for your system if that is your case. And the other one is availability, which is pretty obvious. Is it up and running? Is it performing? How about recovery? Say for instance, if you have a tsunami warning system, I think the availability is the most important part. Because if it's down, what do I have on it? If we look at a banking system, I think confidentiality is the most confidentiality, maybe integrity are the most two important parts. Availability is important, of course, but not as important. If I talk to you and say, okay, the banking system is down for a few minutes, an hour, you can get over it. You will sleep this night. If I say, your money is gone, oh no, it's not. Oh yes, it is. Then you're like, what? So every single system has his own point of view on security. So you have to pick your battles. So, but say, well, confidentiality is important, right? Privacy. But everything is solved these days because as of May 25 this year, we had GDPR, right? So now everybody is compliant to GDPR, every security or privacy issue is covered, and people certainly know what they are doing with that data. Well, GDPR is based on the principle of least privilege. That means that you only get the privilege of seeing that data if you actually need that data. But say, for instance, that all is in place and you have the perfect system. Then let me show you this.
So I invited a few of the world's best hackers to try to hack me and show me where my vulnerabilities are. And now I'm going to meet them in Las Vegas for DEF CON, the biggest hacker convention of the year. They're going to hack me using social engineering, which is essentially hacking without any code. They just use a phone and an internet connection.
Do you want to do a sample phishing call?
What's phishing?
Phishing is voice solicitation, and basically what you do is you use the phone to extract information or data points that can be used in a later attack.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Who are you going to call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm going to spoof from your number, so it's going to look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. my husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby and he's like, get this done by today. So I'm so sorry. I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for usage information and I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds,
At gmail.com?
Jessica gets access to my personal email address.
Now, if I needed to add our older daughter on our account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message? Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account.
Jess uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry, so there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my password.
Thank you so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. All right, thank you.
Holy shit. So they just gave you access to my entire cell phone account.
You're gonna have to go on and change your password now because it's Jess, my name.
And all it took was a crying baby and a phone call.
Yeah.
Well, there was a piece by Kevin Rose in 2016 from Fusion. And you see that even though the system is perfect, there is still a problem between chair and keyboard, which in this case is the operator. But who is also between chair and keyboard? It's me and you. So for instance, let me get to the next example. You probably all know these kind of emails, right? I am the late princess of whatever. My father died and I have $20 million to spare and I want to tunnel it through your account, blah, de blah, de blah. Nobody will fall for that anymore. Who thinks this is legit? Thank you. But then we got these. I mean, these emails are still quite obvious. I mean, dear Bank of America customer, my bank wouldn't do that. But it has a Bank of America logo on it, it has a trademark on the bottom part of the email, and probably some people that are not that tech savvy will fall for that. But we as developers, we all know that this is spam, right? That this is phishing. Who doesn't think that this is legit? One hand? No. Okay. But let me give you this example. And this is an example from Rabobank in the Netherlands. And I will show you, I will translate it for you. It says, Dear Simon, due to maintenance, your login credentials were reset. To make sure that in the future you can use the Wi-Fi, we ask you within 48 hours to update your login credentials. To do so, make sure to use this link, iConnect, Wi-Fi access point, etc. With kind regards, IT and infra support. In this case, iConnect is really the Wi-Fi on-prem for Rabobank. IT and infra support is a really legit unit within Rabobank that takes care of that. iConnect within Rabobank is quite dodgy. So that things are reset and that your password must be reset is kind of legit. Moreover, this one is dedicated to a certain guy named Simon. Personalized, through his personal email on his Rabobank account. And if you send these kinds of emails to the right person on the right email address, which is not quite hard to do. I mean, if I look at your LinkedIn profile, I probably have your email in seconds, like first name dot last name at companyname.country. That's the normal procedure. But if I send it at the right moment, say you're under stress, you have a release, everything goes wrong, and I show you this, and oh damn, I connect again, yes, reset, whatever, and go. Even tech-savvy, high-end developers will fall for it. Because this was a test from the security company within Rabobank. And there were developers who will fall for that. That means if you have enough information, name, location, email address, and you know the circumstances, then phishing can work. Take care of that. But let me get into you first. Who of you owns a laptop? The rest works on their phone. Awesome. But for instance, where do you keep your laptop? Just ask her, you don't have to answer. So say, who takes his laptop from work, back to home, back to work? I do, I'm a consultant, so I have to. Where do you keep your laptop when you're traveling? Say for instance, if you travel by car, do you keep your laptop in the trunk of your car? I do. But what if you have to stop for gas? Do you leave your laptop inside your car? Or, in my instance, my wife calls me. She needs some quick groceries and en route there is a supermarket. Do I leave my laptop in my car? I mean, it's pretty easy if I'm working for different companies to get into a company, see what your habits are, follow you for a week, know that every once in a while you need to stop for gas and steal your laptop. And then you have to consider what's on that laptop. So, who has a copy of important data on his laptop from the customer? I do. I have the complete Git repo on my laptop. Say for instance, is there any information on there that can lead back to customers? Say numbers, names, email addresses. Don't answer that. People are filming. But then the question: who encrypts their hard drive? Not everyone. You should. And then the other part. Who has access to your laptop? Is it just you? Or is it your co-workers as well? I mean, if you go for the toilet, do you lock your laptop? There's a funny story. Yeah, I do too now, because once we did this prank to some of my co-workers. He didn't lock his laptop, and we sent out an email to the whole department. This Saturday, a barbecue at my house. Drinks are free. He never left his laptop again without locking it. It works. So lock your laptop. But then, next part. Passwords. One of my favorite. Who uses a password manager? I do. I think that's the best way to work, actually. Because the other part is, who uses a password more than once? Yeah, sure. Just a few. You know that if you use a password more than once, it's quite easy to find a script and apply that password to, say, your eBay account, your Amazon account, your Google account, your Bing Hotmail account, if that's still in place. And it's in seconds. If one password is compromised, we can get into all of these accounts. So, reusing your passwords, no. Who randomizes the passwords? Like, I don't type them in or randomize from I do. And I leave them in my password manager, so I actually don't know what it is. My password manager is protected, of course. There was a story from my former employer. I was there at the office and I needed the Wi-Fi password. And I was asking him, okay, where do you keep what's the Wi-Fi password? He said, go up to my desk and there's a piece of paper over there that holds the Wi-Fi password. I went up there, was looking at there, and it was a booklet. I opened the booklet and it was every freaking password he owned was in that booklet just plain on his desk, including the Wi-Fi password, luckily. But you can imagine that leaving it there unprotected is not a good practice. Who uses Google, like Google accounts, like Google Mail or Gmail or that kind of stuff? Who has two-factor authentication on that? Good, because if they know your password, you still have to log in through a number on your phone or on another device. Same holds for Apple accounts and that kind of stuff. So two-factor authentication is actually a pretty good way to save yourself. Because who does DevOps? I will come into questions afterwards. Thank you. It's a bit shy because lights are shining in my eye and cannot see everyone. But who does DevOps? Okay, let me rephrase it. Who has access to production, so your production database, and has to clean up the crap if something goes wrong? Lucky guys who doesn't do that. Oh, awesome, you have a good night of sleep. But everyone who needs to clean up the crap after something went wrong does DevOps. If you build the shit, you run the shit, you maintain it. But that means you have elevated privileges. You can get into production, you can have access to client data. So if they know your credentials, they can use you as a mule to get into the database, right? Be careful with that. Who has a copy of the production data on his local machine for testing purposes? Yes, because we want to know how production is like and how it responds on load. I did that too, but is all the PII data, so the personal identifiable data, is it anonymized? Don't answer that question, just think of it. Because, again, if I have your laptop and I can go into that, hey, I have a copy of that database. It's not quite GDPR proof. So, I worked for banks and institutions like insurance companies, and we all got these things in place where they force you to do an online course. What is security? What do you have to do? Don't let the bad guy in. Does he have a credential to get in? And that kind of stuff. Don't let anybody look over your shoulder when you type in your password. Use a strong password, blah-de-blah-de-blah. That's all good. But then the new guy comes in. And I don't know about you, but I've worked in some pretty bureaucratic institutions, like government institutions and banks. And the first time somebody is in, everything is supposed to be ready. But it isn't. At the front gate, there is not a pass for him, so he cannot get in. He or she in this case. So we have to pick him up, register him as a visitor, say he can get in. But because he is not yet in the system, he doesn't have credentials to get onto the Wi-Fi. He cannot get into the Git repo. He cannot get into the documentation because everything is behind a wall. So in the first place, well, I can get him a local printout and I will get him to work for a couple of days. But after that, you'll see that you need one account, and to have the other account, you need the first account to get the second account and the third account. So it piles up and it piles up and it piles up. And at the end, even managers are complaining it's going too slow because I need this guy because I need new features. And what happens is that at the end of the road, the guy ends up with the Wi-Fi password of colleague A, the Git repo password of colleague B, or a copy of the code, and, well, he's entering the building probably together with colleague C, who is just waiting for him in the corner, because registering every day as a new visitor is not quite a way to work. So we get around these security protocols because it takes a lot of freaking time. But is that good? I mean, how well do you know that person? So that's about you as a person, but let's get into development. And let's get into your code development. And people say that you have to do security by design. Well, that's a pretty nice phrase, but what the hell does it mean? Security by design, yeah, whatever. Well, we have to look into what we do, right? Just from the point of data. First of all, what do we store now? Do we need to store everything? I mean, why should you store someone's religion if you're not using it? Moreover, if you store someone's phone number and you're not calling him, why do you store someone's phone number? Just to gather data for in the future? Then you now have a problem with GDPR. How long do you need to keep this data? I mean, if a customer used your service, has an account, does it stay in forever? Or do we need to clean that up, just for the sake of your own safety? Because do you want to get sued, or your company? And moreover, how does a piece of data traces back to a single person? You can say, well, it's just a number. But if it's just your social security number, it's a pretty damn hard thing. And then most of all, who has access to that data? I already said that GDPR describes why, how long, etc., but it's built on the least privilege principle. And that means that you only can access the data if you need to. There was a story in the Netherlands half a year ago where there was a celebrity in the hospital, and it was like quite a famous celebrity. And it turned out that all the hospital personnel took a peek into the medical dossier, what was actually wrong with that person. And that was not allowed because they were not the doctors and nurses who were actually treating that person. And they were fined for that, which is a good thing in my opinion. But it's not always possible because people have to get each other's back, make sure that they can fill in for each other. So it's hard. But let's look at software development over time, because that's not the only problem we're facing. I mean, who always works with greenfield projects? Like, we have an idea, do whatever you want. Nobody, and that's most of the time the case. You have to work with projects that already exist, right? But even in greenfield projects, it started like this. You have a case, and you build a system on it. It's quite good. Clean scope, small, and it's like this. We have a nice, clean system. It's nice foundation, good walls, nice roof. It works. Not too much, not too little. And then then it goes in production. And the first thing is like, we need a minor adjustment. Minor. Okay, the first one is minor, so no problem. We just build something on it, and it's still nice, clean, feasible. That goes well, that goes into production, works for a few months, and then some nitwit from upstairs in a suit and a tie comes up and says, but can we do this? Yeah, that's normally, I would do that in a second system. No, can we merge that together in your app? Because your app has so many customers already, we want that. Okay. So we built something on top of something else. It wasn't designed to do that, but with some minor adjustment, it is not the prettiest thing, but it works. And if it looks stupid but it works, it's still stupid, but it works, right? That goes on and on and on, and you know that if you give them one finger, they will take your whole hand. So then the next manager comes up and I have the best ID ever, and it has to be in your application. And then you end up with something like this. You have to break it half off, build it, on top of it, make some minor adjustments because, well, it's only a new button that we have to place there, right? And that turns up and turns up and turns up, and another manager comes up, and finally they want your app just to conquer the world. They want to communicate to Mars, they want flying spaceships on it, they want to do everything with it. And that's normally what features are about. I mean, people see business value. They want you to build new business value, and that is good, but some things need adjustments, and some things are not built to build new things on top of. Moreover, the problem is, if you do it like this, and large enterprise systems, funny enough, look like this. Not actually like this, but in the way I described it, right? We built things on top of it, minor adjustment, dirty hack here, small patch here, whatever. We manage it in a batch job, overnight, nobody cares, and it works for the customer. But let me give you a real life example. We had an app that was searching for houses. And at the first it was just anonymously. You could download the app anonymously, it would set up a profile and you could put in house preferences, which was quite awesome. So if I closed my phone, opened it again, or even shut down my phone, opened it again, it was dead, because server side, we built up a profile with a UUID, we stored the UUID on your phone, so as long as the app was on it, it was stored on your local device, and we could create and retrieve your profile anonymously. No identifiable data in it, which was good. And then somebody came up and said, well, we cannot only search for houses from other third-party vendors, but let people pick their own house from the database and pretend if they are for sale, like see how good it is in the market. So we built a new service, the My House service. And the My House service contains a My House, which simply, it's simplified of course, contained in an address and pictures, because that's, and of course, some bulk data of what the house is about. And the UUID to couple the house to a certain profile, because we wanted that not everybody could do that, but they have to register securely, so we had to have an email address, and we had to make sure they choose a password, and with security tokens, we managed to do that. But the other feature was that anonymous login was still possible. So we had to do a hybrid situation, which all sounds good. But the problem was that for the profile, you could anonymously search a profile by UUID. But there was also an endpoint to find all houses that were for sale. And the REST endpoint gave back JSON with the address, the pictures, and the UUID. We exposed it to the outside world. And by having that UUID and doing a second call on the profile service, you find out somebody's email address, because if somebody has a house, he has to be registered with an email address. So you were now able to couple email addresses to physical addresses. And most of the time people choose their email address like first name dot last name at whatever. All right. And this was in for months because we didn't notice. So one of the things you should take care of is what data is actually exposed to the outside world. Because for our product owner and inside the app, everything works perfectly. It was performing awesomely. But if you triggered the endpoints manually, and people tend to do that, then we found out that we gave out more than we actually needed, because we didn't need to expose the UUID. It was for the internal thing only. So we had a data leak. What then? Well, the fix was done in 5 minutes. And that was including building and deploying. Because I can deploy 3 times a day, 4 times a day, no problem. The rest of the crap took 4 weeks. And why? It was fixed, right? Yeah, but then the guys from upstairs come, and then the security company or the security department comes and asks all these questions. But who was exposed? How long was it in there? What was the impact of the leak? Who is victimized? I mean, from a client perspective, that's quite an important one. What kind of leak is there? Are there any more leaks? No, of course not. We're perfect. And the problem was, we couldn't give them the answer. Who was exposed? We could give them a potential number. How many houses were in? How many user profiles have it? We cross-referenced them. And then we could give an approximation. What kind of data is leaked? Yeah, now, well, I just showed you. What was the impact? We don't know. We simply do not know if this thing was triggered or not, because anonymously somebody posted it to our security department. Painful. But we do not know if it was actually utilized by bad people. So the first thing we did afterwards was log everything, because then we could answer these questions, and that would save me about 3 weeks of the 4. And luckily we already had centralized logging in place. For instance, the elk stack is a perfect example of that, but there are more. First thing we did was log all incoming requests that from endpoints that are exposed to the outside with an IP. We could do some alerting on that, perhaps, or we can actually see what happens, and we can report back to the staff upstairs what actually happened if something went wrong. And that's good, because they want to have answers, that's all. But what about CI/CD? They say, okay, did you do security audits? Did you do penetration tests? Do you know how long a security audit takes? In best way, 2 weeks. Worst, on worst occasion, 3 months. I deploy 3 times a day. How? But did you do penetration testing? Because your last penetration test was like 4 months ago. Again, I deploy 3 times a day. How? Because you want me to move faster, bigger, better, stronger. So we did some automated testing. First of all, Sonar, which is quite obvious. Fortify, which is a system that can check for code vulnerabilities. And you are all developers, most of them Java developers. Do you know what this is? It's a Maven POM file. And it's the dependency part from line 977 to 1023. So it's just a snippet of all the dependencies that were in a single system. And then you can ask yourself, do we need all these dependencies? Because if a dependency gets in, it never gets out anymore. And are all these dependencies secure? Are there vulnerabilities inside these dependencies? Because they can be utilized. Simply by installing things like the OWASP dependency check, or there are other things like commercial parts from CLM from Sonatype, or the stuff from SNCC, or X-Ray from JFrog. Get that for an enterprise, get that in place, that every single build or deployment will be tested on vulnerabilities on your dependencies. Because you can write 3 lines of code, but because of dependencies, it can end up with 400 lines of code. Who does code reviews? The rest of you does pair programming, I guess. Now, the code reviews are important. Pair programming is a good thing as well, but most of the time it's like, fix that. Perfect, YOLO, deploy to production. We test in production, yeah, try that with a bank. And code reviews are most of the time are by style. Like, no, I don't like that bracket on the next line, I like it on the same line. You shouldn't use a string buffer, you should use a string builder. But nobody looks at security, because if we had looked better on that spot, we have seen that something was exposed. Just to refresh your memory. This was the code that we had to review, of course, a snippet. Who knows what the fix was? This. Single annotation to make sure that the JSON that was passed ignores the UUID. And we didn't see that because we were just focusing on that feature and not on the whole system. And we didn't look at it from a security perspective, just did it work? And of course it worked, because we deploy everything, we show everything. We've got everything at our disposal, which is good for testing or for feature-wise, but security-wise, not so much. So we have to design to be compromised. I mean, we all work with these product owners that want you to build features, and they want it not today, they want it yesterday. But how about security? Is it secure? Is it secure enough? I mean, security most of the time comes implicit. Like, yeah, it has to be secure. Yeah, it has to be fast. But nobody tends to write that out or speak that out. And as a developer, I think you have to push back to say, okay, that's fun and stuff, but we have to make sure that it's secure as well, and it takes time to test that, or at least to review that in a certain way. So on one point, it's the business side of the story that pushes for further features. On the other side, it's you that we have to review our code and see our code also from a security perspective. And I can go over things like password protection, if you do that yourself, that you use a cryptographically strong hash instead, because there are all of these things that are in place, and you can look up which are best practices for you as a developer. Because we as developers are just as important as security guys. Centralized logging and alerts on it. That's what we maintain to do. I mean, we do now alerts on high CPU because somebody's probably bashing the system, or overflow on 500 errors, which we can log in Kibana and do alerting on it. Other things like strange parameters. If somebody does a question and uses the word union in it, they probably want to do some sort of attack. SQL injection. So by logging these common things and do alerting on common things, which are all over the internet if you look for them properly, you can, first of all, you can report back to your manager, but also you can prevent that if something happens, it doesn't go too far. And you can like grab it, you can grab it at the point where it's still good for that sake. And the other thing that is quite important, most of us work in a enterprise kind of situation that we have to deal with security teams, right? And normally I saw these guys from security as my enemies, because I built something and I already shipped in production, and they were only pointing out, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and I hated them for that. And of course, I deploy 3 times a day. A security audit takes takes about a couple of weeks. And those guys are picking on things like network layer security because they're good in that. Yet your headers are not strong enough. Dude, we are accessing that point from a app. So we cannot use these headers that we are from the same URL. It's pretty impossible. Yeah, but you should do that. Why? And instead of doing why, just go and talk to these guys and say what your problem is and make sure that they loosen up with a beer or two. And you can come up with good practices in that instead of bashing each other up. Because I think if security departments and developers work more closely together, we can at least make sure that these things, as the things I just described, will come less and less and less. So I would dare you to get onto your security guy and drink a cup of coffee with him next week. And try to make sure that all of the things I said, it starts with you, just you as a person. How secure are you? Then your code. How secure is your code, and is your team working on the code? And get in a good shape with your security analysts, because they do know a thing or two, and they can help you. But we should not bash each other up. Yes. My name is Brian. I still work for the same company I used to work for. I'm not a security expert. I'm just an engineer, but these are the things I've learned over time to do and to be more secure in my way of coding. First of all, thank you. And there was a question. Yes, I tried to... Oh, there's somebody coming up with a microphone also.
Hi, thanks for the nice talk and for spreading awareness about security among all of us. I have 2 questions actually. The first one is related to the password, the Power Password service you are using. how do you protect all your credentials? Is it with a master password? And if yes, how do we mitigate the risk of actually losing our master password? If someone understands the master password, what do we do?
That's a very good question. You mean the password manager I use personally, I guess?
Yes.
Yes, it has one master password, but there are security, that depends on the system you use. There are multiple password managers, of course, and there are fallback scenarios with two-factor authentication or getting it back from through your phone or whatever. That's one thing, but you are absolutely correct if you would say that it's a single point of failure. If you lost that password, then you're probably screwed. Yes, that is true, but it is better. I don't say it's the perfect way to go, but I think it is better than writing your passwords down on paper, which my former manager did, using your same password over and over again. But most of the time I would say try to do that because it must be convenient, it must be workable, right? If I have 15 passwords, I may have more, and I have to keep them all in my head, I will screw up. So sometimes what I even do if the service is not important on the internet, I let them generate a random password for me. I do not even care anymore because the next time will be in 2 months and I will say, forgot my password. And it will come back to my email. That's one thing. For the passwords I do use, most of the time there is also a cycle on it, like every 30 days you have to refresh that password. But you still have that one single point of vulnerability that you have to get in with your master password to do so. And I don't know if there is a better way. If somebody has a better way, please come up with that and I will put it in my sheet. But thank you for that question.
Okay. By the way, for the password managers, there are also other type of authentication except master password, like keys, and it is very good for productive usage for within the teams. If you have some protected share, you can store the master key file there, and that's kind of a way. Thanks for the answer. I agree with you that it's better to use password manager. I honestly use it for personal situations too. The second question was about the example with the application where one can get back to the application after they, for example, turned off their phone. Mm-hmm. Do we have a problem with shared devices there?
Yeah, we do had a problem with shared device over there, but it was designed this way, and I can't get into the architectural design, but that's outside of the scope of this talk. But it was just to, if you switch your phone off and switch your phone back on, you would still be able to retrieve that data, and the data was not supposed to be on the phone. That was the architectural decision, which was outside of the scope for me as a developer. But okay. I agree that was a problem for that system.
Okay, but do we also have the problem with authentication? If you don't have authentication on your phone, mm-hmm. and someone gets your phone just to look on your at your pictures or something else, and they open this application, is it critical or not?
That depends. From the anonymous point of view, that you don't have a problem because we didn't share any personal identifiable data yet. Of course, we had that vulnerability that you could get the UID from the one point and enter it to another endpoint. That was the vulnerability on site. But if you could have the phone, then you could retrieve the UID if you're savvy enough and use that to get the profile. But normally the profile didn't say that much, so there wasn't that much of a burden over there. And yeah, the design could be better, and that's why we choose after that to do everything with a password credential and based on JWT tokens and OAuth2 to make sure that everything was secure.
Okay, thanks a lot. And yeah.
All right. I see no more hands. So first of all, I see a hand over there. Andy, do you want to ask? All right. So thank you for coming. Enjoy your day. Enjoy the snow, perhaps, but see you around.